In life's journey, we must seek to reflect, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Road to Rediscovery with your host, Aubrey Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on past life lessons to learn and grow from them, and to take it to the next level and helping others who are struggling through dark times. Now, as we all know, our lives are filled with the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Some parts that can be so low that it feels all ways to recover seemingly are exhausted, right? We reach a point to where we feel lost, alone, isolated, hopeless. Some may refer to this as rock bottom. As you know, I love listening to podcasts, and I came across my special guest on iTunes. When I read his bio, I was fascinated with his transparency. He's a former drug addict who did time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. And he's also a single dad. When released in 2006, he had very, very little on his person. But despite that, he kicked his drug habit and started the long climb up. This gentleman is the embodiment of rising up from the bottom, embracing and learning from life's lessons, and helping others who are struggling. He's the creator and host of the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited for this conversation. Let's welcome Mr. Sean Dustin to the show. Sean, how you doing, man? Welcome.
I'm great, Aubrey. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me onto your show and giving me a chance to provide some value to your listeners.
Oh, thank you so much, man. I know what you have to share with your insights will resonate with the listeners without a doubt. So we're just going to dive into it, man, with some of the usual initial question, right? Just share with the listeners, you know, who you are, where you're from, and what was life like for Sean growing up?
Well, my name is Sean Dustin. I'm 46. I grew up in Northern California, in the Bay Area, Contra Costa County to be specific, which is maybe about 30 minutes outside of San Francisco. And my parents divorced when I was 5. That was probably not a very good situation. I heard a lot about it. I don't remember seeing any of it, but from the stories that I heard. And so, it was an abusive situation, verbally and somewhat physically, I think. I don't know, I guess from that, it affected me at some level, because from that point on, I was around 5. I started basically just acting out and like getting in trouble in as early as 3rd grade. I remember I got kicked out of preschool and that was in the 3rd grade. That's what kind of sparked the me having to go to school near my house, because the daycare center that my mom had me in was right behind the elementary school that I was in. So it was a perfect situation for her. She was working in San Francisco and commuting. And so this just made it so I had to be a latchkey kid, which is a horrible idea for anybody out there thinking that latchkey kid thing is great. When a kid has no supervision and no direction and no discipline, that is not a good situation. Kids crave that. They need that. They need the discipline. They need the structure of something. So, I mean, that's the first part where it went off the rails. And the further that, my mom, she worked in San Francisco. So, I mean, I was able to be there, after school, have a lot of time by myself. She worked in accounting. So the tax season was, sometimes she didn't get home till like 9-10 o'clock at night. And so, I mean, I could do whatever I want, there's no restriction. They put me on restriction. Okay. who's going to enforce that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know what time you call every day. I just got to make sure I'm here and answer the phone. Because humans are creatures of habit, unfortunately. And so, that just led into, a lot of trouble in school. Got suspended quite a bit in elementary school, made it into junior high, got expelled from that junior high, went to my uncle's house and went to my dad, got in trouble down there, went to my dad's up in Sacramento, got in trouble there, went back to the school that I got expelled from. They let me in reluctantly. And I, ended up like 3 weeks before school was out, and I had straight Fs. I was failing out. They said, you know what, go home and don't ever come back.
Wow.
We're not suspending you. We're socially promoting you to the 9th grade, and get the hell off of our property and never come back here. And so I got a 3-week early vacation, and there was no one to play with, but I mean, that's just the kind of like trouble I would get into,
Right.
And it didn't stop there, and that was just another beginning of it. Because in high school, it was a whole different ballgame. I got into some legal trouble with the law. I got put on probation. At 16 or 15, I think, I started doing meth. I had already been smoking weed. I'd smoked weed the first time when I was a kid, probably 8 or 9 years old. I'd found some in my mom's drawer, and I don't think she was smoking it, but parents have some shit stashed around somewhere, and I found it and I knew what to do with it, which was a crazy thing. I'd never seen it before, but I just, for some reason, I knew what to do with the bong and where to put the weed and to light it and to smoke it. And I did. And I jumped on my skateboard and rode straight down the hill and didn't stop. And that was the first time that I realized that, wow, there's something out there that makes you invincible, or at least makes you feel like you're invincible. And so, getting in trouble with the law kind of was probably a good thing, because my mom had to give me up as a ward of the court because it was incorrigible. I was running away, not coming home, doing all kinds of stuff, doing a lot of drugs. I'd done I think a 151-day stint in the boys ranch by this point. That didn't work. The last trouble that I got in as a juvenile, my mom was just like, hey man, I can't deal with him anymore. And so they gave me a violation of my probation, and they gave me an option to do 9 months in juvenile hall or 6 months in a treatment center, group home drug treatment center. And so, me being the person that I am, and manipulative and really, just only looking out for myself all the time, I'm like, oh, well, there's girls there, right? It's co-ed. Well, sure, 6 months and there's girls. Well, that's a no-brainer. I'm gonna go there. And 6 months turned into 16 months, because in a drug treatment center, it's not about the time, it's about the progress.
Right.
So I was in there manipulating and doing all kinds of stuff, and just continuing the behavior. And they just they weren't having it. And so, finally I cried, and I got real, is what they would call it, after like months of just not fighting it. And this is where I really learned the term "you have to surrender to succeed" meant.
Right.
Because people would always just say that to me, and they're like, well, you have to surrender to succeed. You have to surrender. And I'm like, dude, that's so contrary to what because I was a team sports guy. I played sports and everything else. And it's like, how do you surrender and win? That doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. But it did when I looked at it in that context, because it's like, it's not so much that you're fighting anybody, you're fighting yourself.
Right.
You're fighting you're in your own way all the time, or I was in my own way all the time. And so I'm the one that was that I was fighting me, and I had to surrender to the system, or whatever it was that I was fighting. And at this particular juncture, I was fighting the fact that I didn't want to look at the hard things that people run away from.
Right.
And I touched a little bit of it. But I don't know, for whatever reason, I just wasn't, I just never really trusted people after my dad, bounced. And and it just got worse as I got older, because the behavior that I had causes people to not want to be around you, causes people to want to abandon you.
Right.
It was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that I kept rolling, like a loop that I just kept getting on and couldn't get off of.
Right.
And that took me into, like, eventually I ended up graduating that program. I went into an emancipation house, got a job, moved in with my brother, which I didn't realize that he was trans until I moved in, and saw that he was dressing up like a woman all the time. And I knew that he had been an actor, prior to that.
Right.
And that's what he had told me when I moved in. Oh, I'm doing this for a role. And I'm just trying to get into character and all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right, that's strange, but whatever.
Yeah.
And at some point I ended up getting kicked out of there just because I knew it wasn't that, and I just was having a hard time dealing with it. I mean, this is this is my brother. We play basketball together, we do all this other stuff together, and it's like, I think one of the things that a lot of trans people don't understand when it comes to the family members is that your family member's dying, basically.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because the person that I knew no longer is there anymore.
Right.
You are, but my perception of you is gone now, and you have kind of died. The person that you were, the dead name that you were, is dead now, right? And so you've moved on, and everything else is good, but the family rarely ever gets a chance to mourn the loss of the dead name.
No, that's exactly right, man. And when it comes to scenarios like that you just mentioned there, Sean, the consideration is a two-way street, right? It's not just what we need to consider of those who are trans or those who are bi, right? There's some things they need to consider of us, right? To your point. Just the history of growing up with your brother playing basketball, doing guy things together as brothers, and that person is basically kind of being laid to rest because this new person in this new form or this new lifestyle or different lifestyle has now emerged. So, that consideration of how the other side feels is a two-way street. It totally is. Now, there's something that you touched on a minute ago that I was very intrigued on, and I want to get your viewpoint on this. Okay, you mentioned earlier how you found yourself fighting the system, and manipulating the system, right? So there's two things I'm interested in. Number one, there are people who are just natural born manipulators, and whether they are trying or intend to manipulate or not, they will manipulate the system. Let's say rehab, okay? And no matter what intentions you have, if someone's manipulating a system, the system usually doesn't work, right? Like you mentioned before, it's not a matter of the time you do in the rehab, it's the recovery. Okay. So my first question to you is, uh, when you were fighting and manipulating, your intent originally was not to recover or rehab at that point, was it?
No, I was just carrying out what I knew. So here's a perfect example. We were allowed 3 cigarettes, or 7 cigarettes a day. The people that come from the emancipation house, they're allowed to leave the facility. We got money, like we got some money a week, like an allowance, right? So I would just save up all of mine. I'd have them go and buy me a pack of cigarettes, and I'd turn around and sell those extra for like $1 a piece, right? And so I was selling haircuts. I would do stuff like, I got in good with the cook in the kitchen, and she would allow me to come and help her, even though I wasn't on the kitchen detail. So I go in, help her cook, and I would come out. All the other clients would have what was regular for breakfast, and I'd come out with a fat ass egg omelet. You know what I mean? Filled with all kinds of stuff. On purpose, you know what I mean? And and sit down right in front of in the middle of everybody and look. Now what? Wow. You know what I mean? It's like it's just like that kind of a punk ass attitude.
Sure.
And that's, I mean, maybe, I don't know, that's the way that I would perceive it as somebody, you
Right.
know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah.
dude, why you gotta be like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so and it just never stopped. It
Mhm.
never stopped.
Mhm.
Even though I stopped doing drugs for a while, that's the easy part, man. The drugs is the easy part. It's the
Right.
behavior that the drug and being in the criminal element and the criminality and then going to prison and having to still have that.
Yeah.
It's just the behavior is what the problem is. And it's a lot of the times it never gets dealt with. When you go to
Mhm.
prison, the behavior doesn't get dealt with
No.
unless you're in there actually trying to deal with it. If you're trying to rehabilitate yourself,
Right.
but it's a difficult situation because I mean, that
Mm.
those things that you learned in that lifestyle are what help you to survive in prison.
Right. Sure.
Knowing that, being able to hustle, being able
Yeah.
to, slip in and out of any environment. I can go hang out with the brothers for a second if I wanted to. I
Right.
can go slide over to the Pisces
Right.
and,
Right.
that's the kind of guy I was. Cause I mean, I'm white,
Yeah.
but I mean, I look Hispanic. I look like I could be a number of different things. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and knowing how to talk to people, it was just a shoe in for me to be able to be a chameleon,
Yeah.
basically. So it's like I never ever really had an identity. I was
Mm.
always trying to be something that I wasn't. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't like who I was to begin with, honestly. And so when I finally fell, and there's a lot of in between that, but when I finally fell, it was for fraud. And I was doing basically assuming other people's identities and doing the credit card fraud and
Yep.
getting
Yep.
accounts and that weren't, they were, I was starting the accounts and setting them up in somebody else's name. And that was
Mhm.
around the time when it first started.
Gotcha.
And when I went to prison for drug trafficking and fraud related to that. I got out in 2006. I paroled to my mom's. I was not done. There was still things that I had on my resume that I wanted to accomplish in that criminal environment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that may sound crazy to you, but it was in my head. And what it was
Mm.
is I knew that there was a way that I could make credit cards myself, get the
Mhm.
information, press them out, do the cards, put the information on the magnetic strip in the back. And
Mm.
I did. I figured it. I hooked up with the people that
Yeah.
showed me how to do it. And I got in trouble again, got lucky. Was on I think it was January 1st, 2010. I got
Mhm.
arrested. I got arrested. uh what was it? I got arrested doing something at doing a Best Buy. I did the purchase online and I went to pick it up in the store,
Yeah.
and I'd been up all night or 3 days trying to perfect this thing, and
Right.
it was like I had no business even going out doing anything. I didn't need it. I had three of them already in a box in
Right.
in the hallway, plus a bunch of other things that were I just needed to sell. And it was a rush, man. It was
Yeah.
like I just couldn't, I can't explain it. And so I ended up getting arrested there. I did a violation. I think I did two total on my wallet between 2006 and 2010. One was
Mhm.
for a 90-day drug treatment center.
Mhm.
Got kicked out of that. There's a whole story on that one. And then had to do another violation to do a 90-day in jail. And
Mhm.
so, and that was a real, like, it was a county facility. So those are more dangerous than prisons, kind of, because
Are they?
you got cowboys in there, you know what I mean? The guys that
Sure.
don't
Sure.
understand that the politics of prison don't. It's like to me, sometimes it seems like there's a bunch of people in there that hear about what prison's like and then try to
Right.
act it out.
Right.
And instead of just like knowing what it is, like, hey man, all this madness doesn't have to happen.
Right. Right.
Um, and so before I went to that, I stopped doing drugs for like a month. I stopped a month before, and I stopped smoking
Right.
just because I knew I didn't want to be kicking that while I was in there, because then it make me vulnerable.
Right. Right.
And
I got you.
so, and then after that, for some reason, I didn't go back to it. I found things. Basically, I found other things. Like I started playing slow pitch softball. And it sounds crazy, but it was an activity that took me away from the people that I was around prior.
Right.
It put me around people that I had it forced me to get to know other people.
Right.
I had fun doing it. I started being accountable because I'm on a team and I have to show up. And so that started happening. I started getting good at it. I started building a little bit of self-esteem. I didn't like the way that the league was running, so I started my own in my city.
Right.
And that was the beginning of everything. It's like, so if I make a goal and I achieve it, I don't need drugs to make me feel good about myself, or try to hide the fact that I feel like shit about myself because I can't accomplish things.
Right.
But here's the formula. You just have a goal.
Yeah.
You do what you got to do to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
You do it. It feels good. You level up, and then you figure out, okay, what else can I do? And you just keep leveling up, and you just keep tackling bigger and bigger challenges, because now this esteem is coming, and you're not always gonna succeed. There was plenty of times that I've failed, but the failures are important because there's a lot of magic in failing.
Absolutely. 100%, man. And, I got to tell you, man, the approach that you've taken, which I've heard in a lot of rehab strategies, when you give up a bad habit, replace it with something good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's those incremental changes where over time you start to put two and two together, and it's like, hey, I don't need drugs to succeed or to feel good about myself, and plus I'm not suffering some crazy crash or trip, from a stint of drugs with the intent of feeling good. This is all natural. I'm feeling good from something that I've done, something that was of value, that made me feel like I mattered and have purpose, right? That's tremendous, man. That is tremendous. So you had to realize at some point that the hustle that you were on, the manipulating that you were doing, and you were fully intentional, it sounds like, especially when you were talking about meeting up with someone who can help you, like set up the whole operation for the carbon strip on the credit cards and the pressing and all that, right? That's fully intentional, like premeditated stuff, right? So at some point, did you feel like going against the grain was exhausting, not trying not to get caught, um, doing something that is wrong or illegal, even though you have the intention of doing it. um, at some point, would that have crossed anyone's mind, that hey, this is something it's really draining me, it's exhausting, when you go to sleep at night, does it weigh on your head? uh, did you have any of that happen at the time?
No, not. I mean, that's why I stayed high all the time, because when
Yeah.
that's the only way that I could do it. I couldn't do it when I was sober, right? It
Right.
would,
Right.
I would try. I would try. I did and this goes to show I was I believe that I'm undiagnosed ADHD,
Okay.
because the meth focused me,
Mm,
like laser focus. There's some
really?
people that get on meth, and they like have piles of stuff all over the place and can never complete or accomplish anything. It's just
Yeah.
they're just running in circles and making a mess.
Erratic.
Me, I would, the only way that I can kind of describe it for people that don't understand, is that movie with Bradley Cooper called Limitless.
Yeah.
And when he would take that little clear pill,
Yep. I
and
remember
he would
that.
be he'd be super laser focused on everything
Yep.
that he was doing.
Yep.
And that's exactly what it was like. I would go for 3 days in a row. I
Hmm.
mean, and tackling things like the California ID and how many different layers there are to it, and
Right.
go into Photoshop, and I would go and peel every single layer off and figure out how that worked.
Yeah.
I got in trouble when I got raided, I was counterfeiting $100 bills.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that was like washing $1 bills and then reprinting over the bill with the stuff. You know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
I would figure out ways to get around shit, but I've been doing that ever since I was a kid, though. You got to remember that.
Yeah.
So my thing is that when I go through, I know I can point out the vulnerabilities in a lot of stuff.
Right.
And I look at ways to get around doing things just naturally. But now I try to tailor it more towards if you're going to manipulate in a way that's going to help somebody, not hurt someone.
Awesome. 100%. Right on, man. I completely agree. And you know, that kind of leads me into wanting to talk about your podcast, which we'll definitely do here in a minute. I did have one or two questions that I've been curious about when it comes to like drug usage and trafficking. Okay. And I'm going to plead ignorance here. Okay. Because you know, everyone has their bag. It wasn't my bag growing up or anything, but I've just heard in drug circles, I guess, or, you know, I've known people who were addicts. They told me, you know, you're either a trafficker or dealer or user, and to do both is like a dangerous recipe. I mean, is that true or no?
Well, I mean, I did both.
Okay.
But I mean, I didn't do it very well. I was a horrible drug dealer. I was a break-even drug dealer.
Mm,
And I make a little bit of money, but it was just
hmm
to like the only the only thing that kept me from getting my ass kicked really
hmm
was that I had a lot of strippers around me at the time.
hmm
And so the guys that I was getting the drugs from,
Yeah.
I mean, where do you think they're going to want to hang out if I got, you know, all them women running around? And I wasn't
Right.
like sleeping with all of them. They were just, I was cool with them. There was two
Yeah.
twins that lived in the complex right, you know, in like right around the corner from me, and they would always come and hang out. And so they
Nice.
became like little sisters, you know,
hmm hmm
and they'd always bring all their friends over.
hmm
And so yeah, I was horrible at it. But what I would do though is that anytime that I would start having a problem with something, I
hmm
would switch over to start selling another drug. So I went from like cocaine to ecstasy to GHB to
mm
crystal. And then the
Wow.
crystal is what you know, there's some things in your life that you cannot. Is it this is a clean show, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's some things in your life that you just can't F with, right?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And meth was like that for me. It's like every time I tried it,
Ah.
didn't matter which way I tried it. Okay, well let's try it, do it this way. All right, well let's not do
Yeah.
this and let's try it, still do it.
Right.
And it's that what they call it, insanity, right? You're
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to do the same thing a different way and expect a different result. And so
That's right.
finally I realized, you know, it's all right, in 2010 that all right, I just can't mess with that.
Right.
But that didn't stop me from getting hooked on and having a 7-year opiate addiction after that too. Because when I was playing
Really.
softball, I got injured,
hmm
and the doctor they knew it was in my file that I was a meth addict, right?
Right.
From at Kaiser, and
hmm
they gave me some painkillers,
Right.
and I kept telling I need more, and she's like, well, it says in your file that you're this, and I'm like, they said, well, if you really do need it, then just sign here that says you're not gonna come after us if you get addicted, and they did, and it just
Wow.
7 years after that, and you know, at one point I was spending $500 extra a month
Mm.
to on more, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I could function. That's the thing. I could still function.
Yeah.
It wasn't keeping me from doing my job. It wasn't keeping me from doing anything. It was costing me money,
Yeah.
and I would get sick when I would start to come, you know, run out. And
Mm.
so at one point I just said, you know what? I got to stop. And I think it was right before I decided to do a podcast, like 6 months before the podcast,
hmm
before I even started it. I'm like, you know,
hmm
if you're going to be talking to people about nowhere to go but up, and you know, you were a drug addict and you're all this stuff, and like, you know, you should probably stop doing this.
hmm
And
hmm
you know, because you're just going to be a hypocrite. How are you going to talk about something when you can't even do it yourself?
Right. Right.
And so I did. I cut the dose in half until I was
Right.
down to like maybe like 5 milligrams. I think it was up to like 10 a day on 10 milligrams. So it was at 100 milligrams a day.
Wow.
And that's nothing compared to what some people do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was able to do that. And then I finished, I quit completely by taking edible marijuana to take off the rest of the edge of
Yeah.
the sickness that comes after that, because it's
Mhm.
still going to come. It just, if you wean yourself down, it's not going to be as bad.
Right. Right. That makes sense. Yeah. So you weren't one of the zombified addicts. You were functional, truly
Mhm.
functional, and you're able to focus and everything. So let me ask you this, and then I want to dig into the podcast if we can, Sean.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, and we've seen it many times before. Someone who may be either an addict or doing time in prison, or they have a history of assault or burglaries and things like that, for whatever reason, um, there's been a pattern where uh, the, they didn't have the best of childhoods, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Whether it was a father who drank too much and beat them, or just simple neglect, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
um, or drug addicted parents. So, I could see some of that transferring and carried along with the child as they reach adulthood.
Hmm.
Okay, so there's a tie in there. We're all aware of that. Okay,
Hmm.
but my question to you is, because I've wrestled with this. I've had friends of mine who have had rough childhoods, and they just can't seem to turn that corner even as adults.
Hmm.
um, what are your thoughts on, at some point, I believe at some point we must hold ourselves accountable as adults and no longer use, the story, or let that story define us, that we were abused as a child or we were neglected as a child, and that's what led me to here. I mean, is it at what point in our lives does that happen, when we have that realization that, you know what, yeah, I was abused as a child, but I'm an adult now, and from what I've gone through, I should have a pretty decent understanding of what's the difference between right and wrong, and start holding yourself accountable to help make that turnaround, to help turn that corner. um, does it happen for everyone, or does it vary based on our circumstances? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a case by case thing, because I mean, as we know, I mean, as the further we progress in society, and we're learning different things.
Hmm.
One is that, a long time ago we didn't realize that 0 to 7 or 5. Well, I think I'm saying 7, but I think it could be as little as 5. And those are the
Right.
most formidable years of your kid's life, right? I
Yeah.
think
Oh yeah.
0 to 3 is really going to determine what their personality is.
Right.
And we don't know what causes trauma, aside from the normal stuff, like,
Right.
molestation, sexual abuse, physical abuse.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yelling at your kids could cause some form of trauma. It
Hmm.
definitely it conditions them in a way that you don't want it to be conditioned, because then they're going to accept that from
Right.
other people when they get older, that as it's okay, because, well, my parents yelled at me, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the number one, I mean, and I say this is, I say this across the board, that the number one public safety issue should be untreated trauma.
Mm. Hmm.
And untreated trauma, meaning in the way that, and what I mean, like, public safety, is if a lot of the symptoms of what we see in society, whether it's drug addiction and what comes after drug addiction, which is
Hmm.
criminality, burglary, thefts, rapes, other types of infractions,
Hmm.
a lot of that is from untreated trauma.
Hmm.
People that haven't dealt with their issues or figured out why it is that they do what they do,
Right.
because of, whether they were, abandoned as a kid, their dad left them,
Right.
just all of these things that kids just don't understand. They're not, their brains aren't fully developed enough to be able to understand what's happening. And if somebody's not there, like kind of coddling them and
Guiding them. Yeah.
guiding them,
Yeah.
they're not going to figure it out. Why do you think they say it takes a village to raise a kid?
It's so
Back
true, man.
back in the day, it was like, it wasn't just your kid, it was the village's child.
That's right.
Everybody took part in having a part in raising that kid, whether it's, hey, he's running around, starting shit over here. Hey, come here, get over here.
Yeah.
Somebody's, you fall, somebody's going to knock your ass right back into line and keep going.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore. Everybody is so divided, man, and worried about like all this election stuff and other stuff. I mean, yeah, it's important, but what's really important? Your own neighborhood. That's what's important.
That's right.
Your own community. That's what's important, because you can't change up there until you change yourself, your bubble,
right,
and the community that you're in. You want to make a change in Washington, then why don't you start in your own neighborhood? Why don't you start in your own community? Why don't you go and volunteer to or try to figure out how to get onto the city council and make a change and do the things that you want to do? You want to make your voice heard? Do it in a substantial way that's going to mean something, instead of just rabble rousing and going, taxpayer funded. You know what I mean? Yeah, taxpayer money, you're stealing it. Dude, there's enough people out there that are screaming and yelling. There's not enough people that are taking action in the appropriate, in the right way, that's actually going to affect change.
Totally.
Sorry, didn't mean to get off on the
no, that's okay, man. Call to action, right? Call to action. And part of that call to action is holding ourselves accountable. If we want change, then don't just sit there on a rant, right? I mean, you take the action to be the change. Take the action to foster the change in your own world, in your own community, right? And that takes us to the podcast. Now, you're doing some amazing things with the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast in allowing, or having, not allowing, but having a platform for people who want to tell their stories, people who've gone through tremendous struggle, to let others know. Very similar as the Road to Rediscovery. Number one, you are not alone. And number two, there's always hope. There's always hope. So talk to us about Nowhere to Go But Up and the inspiration behind it.
Well, it started because of my own story. I mean, I'd started at zero 3 times in my life. I'd lost everything and had to pick back up and start again. Almost died 5 times, three of which were drug related. 2 were vehicle related, but alcohol, with a substance. So I mean, I had gone through so much, like in 18 years, man. I felt like I was possessed by something, and then one day it just went away. And it was, I just wanted I wanted to tell my story, but I also didn't want it to be about me, because I knew that if I was going into, and I had a hard time starting this podcast, because I had to really think hard, because I'm a manipulative person. I have these things in me, so I really have to be careful about why I do things. And when I do them, that it's not self-serving to the point where, because people could see through that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? People can see through that. And I was like, all right, just get out of your head. You're not going to be famous. You're not going to be Joe Rogan. If that's why you're going to do this, then you should just go sell it. Sell the equipment that you just bought, because you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Wrong reasons. Absolutely. That's right.
And so I had to figure that part out first. And then I had to stop trying to convince myself that I had nothing to say, and then nobody wanted to hear what I had to say anyways. That imposter syndrome. It took me a year. It took me 18 months to start this damn podcast and do the first episode. And it was because this first 6 months I got everything to do it. The second year, or the year after that, I tried to convince myself, talk myself out of doing it. So, and it basically, I don't know, man. I just wanted to hear other people's stories, I guess. And I wanted to be able to tell mine in bits and pieces of how I related to what they were saying.
Yeah.
And I guess it just worked. Um,
Yeah.
and it's gotten better and better and better from the first one all the way. Like if you listen to episode 1, which is horrible, there's cell phone ding ding
Yeah.
going out. I'm sick.
Yeah.
I have a cold. I think I played hooky from work that day, and decided to do it. And
Yeah.
to episode 75, which is like, it sounds like a completely different production.
Wow.
And that's what I love about podcasts is
Yeah.
that you can literally pick somebody, and I love new shows because you start with them and you grow with them, and as they're growing, you're growing with them. You're getting to see them, and hopefully they're as transparent as I am, because I show you I clearly show you what I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times I'll have people on my show that if I'm having an issue with something, like I had a financial a guy on there once, and it's just things that I'm struggling with that I get a coach on, or somebody that I can talk with them about it, and maybe try to work something out, and let you see that this is my process and this is how I kind of like figure myself out. I don't know, man. And then it sort of took on a life of its own, because now I do a little bit more than those, because it was bottoms and life struggles and how my guests get through it, and what interests me. And then it turned into what I'm passionate about. And then it turned into, it is what it is now. It's more of like a variety. There's all kinds of stuff in it. It just doesn't have one thing, nowhere to go but up could be a lot of different things. We're here as a society right now. We're here where we have nowhere to go but up.
Right.
And I hope that everybody takes the opportunity to understand that, this isn't where we're at. Is not a bad thing. It is an opportunity for us to see how screwed up everything is, and how our own media, the way that we see the media and everything else, is like, come on, man, you guys don't see this. You don't see that there's something wrong here.
Right.
And I think people are starting to see it. It's just we're so ingrained in that infighting, man, that us versus them, the Democrats, Republicans.
Yeah.
And it's
a
like
lot of division.
And it's like, you guys don't get it, man. It's two heads of the same snake. They all work for they all work for corporations. It's just they work for different ones. The Republicans are on a different team of billionaires, and the Democrats are on a different team of billionaires, but it's the billionaires that are running them because they get them reelected to give them the money to do all that stuff. So
no, I've heard about 3 or 4 of your episodes, man, and you guys get into some pretty heavy stuff for sure. And that I appreciate, right? Because it's opening yourself up, making yourself vulnerable, right? To tell your story. I mean, that's what you offer your guests, and your guests definitely take them, like the young lady who was incarcerated, right? So her, and I truly appreciated where she was coming from. And I've heard you talk about, your own personal struggles on the show as well. And to me, that's tremendous. I truly believe there's a sense of freedom that someone receives within their heart when they release something like that, and share something like that with, that can leave them vulnerable. There's a freedom. I mean, it's almost like a weight lifted off of your shoulders, man. So, I got to commend you for the great work you're doing, and Nowhere to Go But Up on that podcast, man, because I'm a subscriber. I'm a believer. I'm going to be listening to episodes from here on out. So it's good stuff, man. And I'm so glad we were able to connect like this. So can you share with the listeners, where can they hear your podcast?
Well, I'm on quite a few of the major platforms. My show basically, so I do have a podcast, but I also, I release it as a YouTube video on my YouTube channel. And then I also live stream to my Facebook group and also my Facebook profile. So when I record one, I'll record it, I'll release it as a podcast first, so it goes out to all the platforms, and then I'll replay it as a live stream and shoot it out to those three places. So it definitely gives me a little bit more reach. And all of those locations are available, and you can find them at linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. All the places that connect to the show, to support the show, merchandise, you want to be a guest, you think you got something you want to say, hit the book a guest tab, and sign up on the podcast, whatever the podcast scheduling page. And if I think fill out the guest form, and if I think you got something that's I want to talk about and have you on, I will. It's that easy.
Nice. Sean, I got to tell you, man, you have indirectly saved me a lot of legwork when it comes to just capturing all the links to include in my show notes for our listeners to connect with you. Okay, that one Linktree link, that's all, that takes them to anywhere they want, whether it's your Facebook page, YouTube, right? Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. So we will make sure that Sean's Linktree direct link is on the episode show notes so that you can connect with him. You can, just friend him on
all the social
media.
All the social media links are there. I'm on all 5 of them. As you can see, awesome. we got the Twitter back there. You got the all those.
There's the YouTube, the Pinterest, LinkedIn. There you go.
So I mean, I'm everywhere that I can be.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. Sean, man, I can't thank you enough for being on this show. I truly, truly am so glad that we connected. I think we're kind of aligned in our mission. All right. You come from, a place of just, discovered humility in sharing your story and opening yourself up, and then helping others to offer a platform to where they can do the same. And the listeners benefit, you benefit, your guests benefit. So again, I can't thank you enough for us connecting, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for the kind words. And, there is more to come, because I have a nonprofit that I'm getting ready to start too, for helping guys re-enter from prison. So that's nice. In the works as well, and so I mean I'm just trying to be, I don't even know, man. I just know that we're in a place where we need more people to pitch in and help and get creative in ways to try to let's not do it the way that it's always been done, because the way that it's always been done doesn't work, and it hasn't worked.
No, it doesn't.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we need people to come together and to realize that we are so much more alike than we are different. 100%. We all want the same kind of things, 100%. Man. Do you want your family to be safe? Do you want your family to be taken care of? Do you want your kids to have a future? Do you want to be I mean, you don't even have to have abundance. I mean, you don't need abundance. You just need to be self-sufficient and your family taken care of. And we haven't, but I would say that our parents' generation and their generation before, they got lulled to sleep, man. They got lulled to sleep, and they didn't catch what they should have. And that's why we're here where we're at right now. And now it's up to us to turn it around, and I don't think it's gonna, I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's going to take a lot more people talking about the problems and not about in solutions, instead of division and why we're different and why. I was listening to something today sorry, it just came to my head.
No, go ahead.
I was listening to something today on PBS, and every time they would mention something, it would be in the terms of black owned or white owned, or like why does it have to be that in front of a business? Like it's a business.
Yeah.
It shouldn't matter if it's white or black owned. I mean, are we still in them days? Are we still in them segregation days where it's like the whites can do this over here and the blacks got to do it over there?
Right,
I mean, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I haven't seen overt racism in a long time. I've seen covert, but like overtly, like people going, "Hey, you N-word."
Yeah.
I have not seen that blatant stuff in a long time. So it's, I just think we need to just really start looking at this at what it is it's not a race war. It's not, it's class. It's classism. That's what it is.
Well, yeah, it is classism. And we need to start being more mindful, at least, guys, your age, my age, people our age, right? We need to be more mindful about the world that we are leaving for our children and our grandchildren, right? So because that change that you're talking about, Sean, I don't think, quite honestly, that it's going to happen in our lifetime. It may start to turn the corner towards development in that direction, by the end of our lifetime. But for it to fully occur, I think is beyond our lifetime, which is why we need to leave the world in a much better place for our children and grandchildren, for sure. Yeah.
Exactly. And it is possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, Sean. So now it's time for us to go into a segment I like to call Three for the Road. In Three for the Road, I like to ask my guest three random yet thought-provoking questions, trying to challenge them to answer in 5 words or less. So what do you think, Sean? You think you might be up for it?
Yeah. Let's go. I can see if I can do this real quick.
All right, right on. Here we go, man. All right. So, Three for the Road. No, question 1. You enter a magical room that takes you to your past. Sort of. In the room, there's nothing but a chest, like a trunk, a footlocker. In it are items from your past. You get to pull out 3 items to bring back with you to the present. What are they?
Items from my past. Holy moly. That's a tough one. I would say my ability to trust. My let's see, my Ford Thunderbird.
All right.
and probably the grow room setup that got stolen from me because I'd probably be growing some CBD or something like that.
Nice. Okay. Awesome.
That was a tough one, man. I was just trying to think of something. Those are hard.
That's okay, man. No worries. This one, the next 2 are going to be easy and shorter. All right. So number 2, persistence. Okay. And the essence of persistence. Is persistence led with the head or with the heart?
I think it's a combination of both. I've experienced this just now, and the person I have to call after this is because of persistence. I never gave up on trying to get this individual, to be able to contact, and it wasn't. It's just, you can't. I mean, you have to be persistent, but you have to be tactful in your persistence. That's what the key is. You can't just keep boom, 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 boom. That's you know what I mean. It's more like a boom, boom.
Strategic.
Yeah. Boom, boom. I'm still here.
Yeah. Nice.
Let a week go by.
Yeah.
Still here. It's and you just got to be tactful with it, and it takes a little bit of, it takes heart, and it takes the mind, because you have to think about how to be creative and how you get some of those things.
No, you sure do. All right, man. Number 3, to top off 3 for the road. Okay. Fill in the blank. Blank gives me freedom.
What gives me freedom? Eliminating my ego.
All right.
Gives me the freedom to be able to have myself be used as an instrument of good instead of an instrument of bad.
Gotcha. I'm digging it. Sean, 100%, man. It's been so great to have you on the show, man. Thank you so much. And like I mentioned, we'll have your link tree in the episode show notes for everyone to connect with you. I will tag you when we get, this up and going, ready for prime time. So once again, man, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you, man. And I appreciate the opportunity, man. And yeah, brother, I'm gonna start listening to your show too, because I'm gonna have you on a guest as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I'd be honored to, man. I'd be honored to. And let's talk about a sequel in the coming months once you get that not-for-profit up and going, because I'd love for you to come back to just give the listeners an update on how that not-for-profit is coming along.
Absolutely, man. I'd be more than willing to do that and delighted to.
Awesome. Awesome. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening to this podcast. Remember, please subscribe, leave feedback, and share with your friends and families. If you want to have the heads up VIP type style notifications on who are upcoming guests before the episode's released, make sure you subscribe to our mailing list at roadtorediscovery.com. That's road, the number 2, rediscovery.com. The road to rediscovery is a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. Together, we're all roadies. And I'm so glad you're on the journey with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon.